All right, it is 6:30, so we're going to get this ball rolling this evening. I want to say hello. My name is Charles Moreland, and I work in community engagement at the Missouri Historical Society. On behalf of MHS, I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us virtually for this installment of STL History Live. Rooted in Love, working at the intersection of multiple movements with Coach Baruch Fraser. This program is presented in conjunction with our Gateway to Pride initiative, which includes a collecting initiative, a virtual exhibit, a major gallery exhibit in 2024, and an LGBTQIA+ endowment. I would like to thank our presenting sponsor, the William A. Kerr Foundation, as well as our programming sponsor, AARP St. Louis, for their support. Before we get started, I do have a few things to mention. Safety is always a top priority, so most of our programming remains virtual at the moment, but we are open Wednesday through Sunday and would love for you to visit if you feel comfortable doing so. Advanced reservations are required to visit the History Museum and Soldiers Memorial Military Museum, and you can visit mohistory.org to plan your visit and reserve free tickets. I want to thank all of our Missouri Historical Society members for their support. We are so grateful for your contributions and helping us to keep history alive. And if you aren't a member yet, we would love for you to consider joining today, which you can do by visiting mohistory.org/support. I also want to thank all of you in the St. Louis City and County for your tax contributions through the Mizzou Museum Tax District. The STL History Live virtual programming series takes place mostly on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. and Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. And we also have monthly Soldiers Memorial Chow and Chat programs, which take place on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. You can find the entire lineup of our programming, including more of our Pride Month programs, at the event calendar at mohistory.org, or under the events listing on the Missouri History Museum's Facebook page. And finally, when you close out the program today, you'll notice that a tab should have opened in your browser with a brief survey. We always value your feedback, so we hope that you will take a minute or two to fill it out and let us know what you thought about the program tonight. We would sincerely appreciate it if you do so in advance. So now let's get on with the program. I'm really pleased to introduce today's speaker to you. Coach Baruch Fraser is a transformer, heartbeat of movements, healer, musician, facilitator of the Black Trans Torah Club, and co-founder of the SETIC Lab, a network of practitioners working at the intersection of dismantling racism, anti-Semitism, and white supremacy. A collaborative leader rooted in tradition, curiosity, and love, Coach strives to dismantle racism, actualize liberation, and transform lives both sonically and spiritually. Coach lives and gardens with their wife, Luana, on Lenni Lenape land in Philadelphia, where he is a student at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College. So let's get the program. I'm really pleased to introduce Coach to you this evening. They are a fantastic speaker and someone I'm very proud and honored to call my friend. So with that, I'm going to pass it on along, and Coach, take the mic.
Shalom, everybody. Can you see me? There we go. All right. Such an honor to be with you all tonight. My name is Coach Baruch Fraser. I use they and he pronouns, and I'm currently living on unceded Lenni Lenape land in Southwest Philadelphia. I am a chocolate brown trans masculine human with shoulder length payas, clear rimmed glasses, and a beautiful purple shirt surrounded by artwork. I am incredibly honored to be here with you tonight, and through the wonder of technology, to be back in St. Louis. Now, one part of being in community is taking a cue from our indigenous siblings, opening up our space with reverence and respect for this land that we live on and the people who steward it. In fact, my Jewish tradition compels me to acknowledge all indigenous peoples who have been and continue to live and exist in relationship to the lands where we currently dwell. We also must remind ourselves, lest we forget, that colonization is an ongoing process, with native lands still occupied due to deceptive and broken treaties. So we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of the Illinois Confederacy. We also acknowledge the Missouri and Osage people. Now, to be sure, acknowledgement by itself is a small gesture. It only becomes meaningful when coupled with authentic relationships and informed action. I am so excited to share with you just a few things I have been learning along the way as I navigate the movements that are working hard to ensure folks who live at the intersection of hate and oppression live another day. And while I'm so grateful for the many ways these movements and the people within them have been working around the clock, I am concerned about us, y'all. You see, the folks who benefit from systematic oppression are all too happy for us to continue falling for the okie doke. It is easier than you think to reproduce the oppressive behaviors that we desire to eliminate. And it is happening in different ways in every movement we care about. So, how do we disrupt and dismantle these oppressive systems while simultaneously disrupting and dismantling oppression within us? I ask myself often, how can I be more aware of the ways in which I am internalizing and reenacting oppression? This is the holy work that is required of us as we navigate our way to liberation. And especially in this month, one in which we commemorate Pride and Juneteenth. Juneteenth commemorates the day General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, to inform the enslaved African Americans of their freedom and that the Civil War had ended. He arrived on June 19th, 1865. 2.5 years after emancipation was enacted. And Pride commemorates the Stonewall riots that began on June 28, 1969, in response to persistent state violence at the Stonewall Inn, the gay club in Greenwich Village. It was led by trans women and non-binary folks of color. Both of these celebrations are centered in the desire to be free and the desire to live free. And I believe the ancestors who paved the way for us to mark these celebrations today would be so happy that we are taking this moment to get clear on the best ways to level up. You see, they left us with a rich legacy, and it is up to us to find ways, big and small, to keep the wheels a turning. So I return to the question: how do we disrupt and dismantle these oppressive systems while simultaneously disrupting and dismantling oppression within us? Well, let me tell you a story. I think most of you are aware of the time that I spent in the movement during the Ferguson Uprising. However, not everyone knows that it was during this time that I was transitioning in public. Not only was I the first out trans person where I worked, I was actively moving through a process of daily explaining to coworkers and the patients I served about how to respectfully refer to me, using the correct name and pronouns. But I was also doing the same thing in the streets, with folks who said they were my comrades in pursuit of liberation. It was emotionally and psychologically draining to put so much into just trying to live free, all the while being obstructed in so many different ways by so many different people. After an action that was planned and carried out under the direction of the Millennial Activists United, which was led by young queer Black folks, there was a meeting by some of the other leaders within the Ferguson movement. It turns out it was a meeting to excommunicate us from the movement. And fortunately or unfortunately, we were invited to this meeting. I will spare you the details of the meeting, but what stuck with me was the humiliation I felt as folks talked about us as if we weren't human, devoid of the divine spark that is within all of us. After the meeting, I was confronted in the parking lot by someone who took their inability to reconcile their own emotions and feelings about me being trans out on me. Now, this person threatened to physically harm me simply because I was trans. And as they yelled and got so close to punching me, I could only think about how disorienting it was to be called into the space of people that we had been in the streets with, oftentimes with our bodies pushed to the front in the vulnerable position between activists and police. What I learned was that our Black queer bodies were disposable. And at this meeting, and time again, actually, we were reminded that the police weren't the only ones who didn't see our humanity or our dignity. How do we disrupt and dismantle these oppressive systems while simultaneously disrupting and dismantling oppression within us? Especially in 2021, when we still have folks saying that the alphabet mafia, which is what they call us, is trying to take over the movement for Black liberation. I believe we must lean in to intersectionality, an understanding about life that comes from a long line of Black women. And in the tradition of Bashim Omro, we will mention their names. In the name of Harriet Tubman, in the name of Ida B. Wells, in the name of Claudia Jones, in the name of Frances Beale, in the name of Angela Davis, in the name of the women of the Combahee River Collective, and in the name of Kimberly Crenshaw, we speak this truth to power. Alicia Garza explains intersectionality in her book, The Purpose of Power, which I believe everyone should read in this moment. She says, intersectionality is a way to understand how power operates. Diversity is what happens when you have representation of various groups in a place. Representation is what happens when the groups that haven't previously been included are included. Intersectionality is a framework by which we examine how groups that experience multiple points of discrimination get their needs met at the same time as, not in spite of, other groups in the same situation. She goes on to say, intersectionality asks us to examine the places where we are marginalized, but it also demands that we examine how and why those of us who are marginalized can in turn exercise marginalization over others. Let me say that again. Intersectionality asks us to examine the places where we are marginalized, but it also demands that we examine how and why those of us who are marginalized can in turn exercise marginalization over others. If only my siblings could have seen the ways they were marginalizing queer folks in that moment. But I also remember in August of 2017, when the police murdered Kiwi Herring of blessed memory, a Black trans woman living in St. Louis City, there was an outpouring of support from not only the LGBTQIA community, but from the movement for Black liberation that just 3 years earlier was having meetings threatening to kick queer folks out. Now, as someone who had been routinely in front of marches with my drum, I was noticing that it always seemed that we moved too fast, particularly for those who were disabled. And when the vigil that took place for Kiwi Herring at the Trans Memorial Garden in the Grove spontaneously turned into a march, I stopped the march and I asked those who were differently able to lead us. So instead of the folks who usually seem to run down the street, those who used wheels and walkers and walking sticks set the pace for our movement forward. This was a moment where I tried my best to lean into creating space that was wide enough for all of us to show up and be present in our fullness, and ensuring that those most vulnerable among us wouldn't be left behind. And that is what intersectionality calls us to do. We must be diligent in our focus, to be aware of how in our spaces and in our movements and in our individual words and actions, we are marginalizing other people. Now, I'm not saying I have it all figured out, but I'm leaning into my growing edges so that I am hopefully creating the least amount of harm to myself and to others. But to be sure, I want to know what you're doing. How are you examining how and why those of us who are marginalized can in turn exercise marginalization over others? How are you disrupting and dismantling oppression within yourself? Right now, we are going to open up the chat so that we can learn from each other. So I invite you to put in the chat ways in which you are disrupting and dismantling oppression right there where you are. How are you examining the ways in which those of us who are marginalized can in turn exercise marginalization over others? I believe the chat is open, so feel free to type in the ways in which you are dismantling oppression. I like the silence, but I also want to leave space in case folks are wanting to type something in. So hopefully, are we sure that the chat is open?
Yes, the chat is open
Great.
to all attendees and
All right. Awesome. I know it takes a while sometimes for folks to get everything typed in. So it looks like we have creating theater that looks at these issues. I learned from researching, listening, meeting people, and discussing worldwide oppressions from then and now. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Ellie says, I speak up and out about any forms of discrimination. Keep them coming. There's so much wisdom here. I feel it, even though we have this barrier of the internet between us. And I appreciate you sharing so generously with all of us. I am reminded of something I wrote at the very beginning of the Ferguson Uprising. I said, in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead, we have a lot of work to do to ensure healing from this disease of racism. But this is an internal work. Those of us familiar with the passage in Leviticus or Vayikra know these words. You are to love your neighbor as yourself. But you got to start with yourself. You have to respect, love, and honor yourself. Then and only then can you master loving, caring for, and respecting your neighbor. Fixing the problem, as I see it, is an inside job. I'm ready for a revolution, and it starts with me. Now, today I would add that it starts with me becoming more aware of the ways in which I buy into the system, but most importantly, find the ways I can cash out of the system. Now, I'm a rabbi in training, so I want to offer a blessing for us as we continue in this space. Berucha ad Shechina, Eloteinu Ruach HaOlam. A blessing you are, Shekhinah, to this universe, giving breath and wind and spirit to the God within us. May this breath that flows through the lungs of the earth infuse our bodies, allowing the rage, the grief and anxiety, the joy, the delight and excitement to flow through us without impediment, letting us feel it, but not getting stuck. May this wind of transformation that is sweeping through the universe right now blow through the trees, through the halls of government and the clouds of Zoom, creating space for the reckoning that must come. May the spirit of truth and justice that lives within us find the courage to cry out, shaky voice and all, to join in the chorus of our siblings throughout the world. Blessed are you, Shekhinah, who gives us the spaciousness to inhale and exhale our way to liberation. So I want to make some space tonight for any questions that are arising for you as we talk about navigating these movements with grace and ease and with awareness. So I think, Charles, are you coming back?
Yes, let me come back in. All righty. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. So if anyone else has any questions they want to ask, the Q&A is open. The chat is still open. So if there's anyone has to say, feel free to send it our way.
While we're waiting on some questions, I did want to sing tonight, and I didn't do it yet. I was wondering how I finished so early, but I think it's because I didn't sing. So I want to sing a song. It's a song that that has come through me over the last year as we've been through the pandemic, and it uses some words that come from the Jewish ritual called Havdalah. And Havdalah means distinction or separation. And so these words are, I will live in fear, I will live in faith and not in fear, holding on to the light. You are my strength and my inspiration, holding on to the light. So I think I can put these words in the chat in just a second. I'm so sorry I didn't do this before because I really wanted to sing the song with you all. All right. I'm going to put the words in the chat. Okay. For you who are familiar, I brought my drum. I never anywhere without my drum. So we'll play a little drum tonight. And feel free to sing along with me. Here we go. Holding on to the light. I'm holding on, holding on. Holding on to the light. Holding on. Holding on to the light. I'm holding on, holding on. Holding on to the light. I'm holding on. I will live in faith and not in fear. Holding on. You are my strength and my inspiration. Holding on. Holding on to the light. I'm holding on, holding on. Holding on to the light. Holding on. I will live in faith and not in fear. Holding on. You are my strength and my inspiration. Holding on. We're holding on to the light. We're holding on, holding on. We're holding on to the light. We're holding on. We're holding on to the light. We're holding on, holding on. We're holding on to the light. We're holding on. All right. Thanks for holding space so that we could we could sing a little. I hope that you are singing and jamming at home or wherever you are in this moment. So what are the questions? What are the things that are coming up for you as we talk about being in these movements, connecting in these movements for liberation, being rooted in love as well as awareness?
We have a question from an anonymous attendee. Do you have any suggestions for an organization to teach and learn about intersectionality and any programming ideas?
Any groups or organizations? I would say that Movement for Black Lives is a great organization to connect with and to think about intersectionality with. And in fact, one of the things that I would recommend watching is the National Black Convention that the Movement for Black Lives held this past year. And it was I think a textbook example of how a movement can, should, and hopefully will continue to be intersectional. Just the notion of talking about all of the ways in which particularly Black folks have multiple identities that oppression is impinging on. And so it's just such a great a great look into intersectionality that you can just watch for a couple of hours or take it in chunks. But that's one recommendation. I would also recommend reading as much material from Black women as possible. Um, you could go back to the Combahee River Collective and read their statement, which you get the kind of the birth of this understanding of intersectionality as Black women hold that frame. So that'd be a couple of things, and also get Alicia Garza's new book, The Purpose of Power.
Fantastic. We've got Sharon in the chat that asked what inspired you to become a rabbi.
Oh, so many people. There are so many people who I am in a long line, first of all, a long line of spiritual leaders. I just found out that my great great grandfather was a spiritual leader. My grandfather is a spiritual leader. Well, was a spiritual leader. My uncle is all on my mom's side, so on my maternal side. But my mom's brother, my mom's sister, there are so many people in my family that have been spiritual leaders, and so I feel like I'm like carrying on a tradition, a legacy that's kind of just been within my family. But really, what propelled me was the people I was working with, both as my work in the in audiology. My patients inspired me, but also my work out in the streets, being with people, doing the work of listening and connecting, and this this work of becoming more aware for myself, but also hopefully helping other people see what important work it is to be aware of how we are in the world, how we show up in the world. That's what inspired me to sit down for 6 years and learn what I needed to learn in order to fulfill the title of rabbi. There were many people who were calling me rabbi, and it felt strange for that to happen without me going to do the study that felt good for me to do.
All right, great. Does anyone else have any other questions? Anything to ask? Now is your time. Q&A and chat are both still open. Well, KB, I was thinking, as I know you from your time in audiology, do you maybe want to talk a little bit about that experience you mentioned briefly just a minute ago, like how that kind of, your time in that and some experiences more that you had in the field of audiology that pushed you kind of in the directions you've gone now?
Yeah, so I I have long thought that when I was an audiologist that I was doing more than just focused on the kind of physical characteristics of one's ears and the physiological process that happens when we hear sounds. That really, in the space that became the office, people came in to consider more than just maybe they had a hearing loss, that they were considering kind of the spiritual, uh, oftentimes the spiritual implications of maybe not wanting to hear certain things or being disturbed by hearing particular things. And what I mean by that is, you know, sometimes our our connection with other people as we communicate with them disturbs us. They say words that are derogatory or offensive, or they say things that maybe are bringing bringing up the past or past trauma or pain. And so when we're dealing with that, this is a full body experience. It's not just something that happens intellectually. And so what I found myself doing was interacting with people on that spiritual level, you know, talking to people about maybe what's coming up for you when you're hearing particular things. How are you able to hold what you're hearing? And how do you know what is yours and what is theirs? And these are the questions I ask myself often, but also these are questions that I think are important for us as humans, particularly as we are in a relationship with other humans who also have pain and hurt and trauma. And so it becomes so important, like this aspect of listening, which is what I was helping people do for so many years. That it's not only a physical process, but what I consider to be a spiritual process. And so, one of the most important prayers in Judaism is the Shema. And the Shema is something we say, interestingly enough, at the two times of day when there is mixture in the day. So at twilight and at dusk. It's the transit prayer we have, meaning like the most non-binary thing prayer we've got, or one of them. And so we have the Shema that says, listen, listen, you God wrestlers. God is one. And like God is your God and God is one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. God is your God and God is one. And so at the most non-binary time of day, the two most non-binary times of day, we say the most important prayer in our tradition, which is calling us to the oneness of all creation. Isn't that something? I love the fact that we have this call, which means we have to hear and listen, meaning we have to be paying attention. So even if one does not have the physical ability to hear, that one must pay attention to the oneness of all creation, pay attention to the oneness of all of us as people, and to push back, in my mind, push back against the notion of racial capitalism, which says that we are divided and evaluated based off of somebody's understanding of race. This pushes back against that. So wake up, pay attention. Twice a day we tell ourselves that. Wake up and pay attention to the oneness. And so I bring kind of that understanding of hearing and listening that I was helping people do for many years on a kind of physical level, and I try to level up a little. Level up to the spiritual, and I think the kind of connective tissue that will help us be more human, be more whole, and be more aware.
Fantastic. We've got a question. Can you please sing again in the Q&A?
Of course I can sing again. Was there a request for a particular song, or it just said please sing it again?
It just said please sing again.
Lovely. All right. So there's this song that I learned from there was somebody who had come not too long after the Ferguson uprising had started, and they came from the Highlander Center, which is in Tennessee. And the Highlander Center is and has been for a long time a center of resource for movements. They have trained hundreds, I'm sure thousands of activists over the course of many years, of course of decades. And I was lucky enough to go there a couple of years ago, actually, and saw pictures of Rosa Parks sitting where I was sitting. It's amazing that, Rosa Parks had come through the Highlander Center and had been trained. And it was like such a beautiful moment to know that, again, like we are in a long line of beautiful humans who have been doing such great work to have more justice in the world. So the Highlander Center is where this song, I don't know if it originated from there, but someone who came from the Highlander Center taught us this song while we were there in St. Louis, in Ferguson. And so I have been singing it ever since. And it is one of my favorite songs to do in community. One, because I love I love the words, but I also love call and response. It's something that I think is just innate in us as humans to want to communicate back and forth with each other. And so the words are solid as a rock, rooted like a tree. We are here, we are strong in our rightful place. And I love this. One reason is because sometimes I need that affirmation. I need to know deep down in my soul that I'm solid, even when it doesn't feel like I'm solid, that I'm rooted, even when it doesn't feel that way, that there's something holding me to the ground and grounding me so that I don't fly away or feel like there's no connection to creation. But then also that I'm here, I'm present, and also I'm strong. Even when I don't feel strong, I'm strong. And to be sure, I am in my rightful place, that no one can take me away from this place that is my rightful place. So here, I'll pull the drum back out. All right, so it's call and response. So I'll say, solid as a rock. And then you say, solid as a rock. You see how that goes? Rooted like a tree, rooted like a tree. We are here, we are here. We are strong in our rightful place, in our rightful place. So that's how the song goes. Here we go. Solid as a rock, rooted like a tree. We are here, we are strong in our rightful place, in our rightful place. Solid as a rock, rooted like a tree. We are here, we are strong in our rightful place, in our rightful place. Solid as a rock, rooted like a tree. We are here, we are strong in our rightful place, in our rightful place. Solid as a rock, rooted like a tree. We are here, we are strong. We are here, we are strong. We are here, we are strong in our rightful place, in our rightful place, in our rightful place, in our rightful place. Whew.
That was awesome. Thank you. We've got Ellie in the comments said, in the past 5 years, people have become empowered to demonstrate and execute their hatred more freely. As an activist, are you seeing progress in this movement? And she says some people have become more empowered.
Some people become more empowered to demonstrate and execute their hatred more freely. I think that is true. I think that's true that people have found they found space. Like, I don't know that they've ever stopped believing what they thought, but they found more space to say these things out loud, like you said, more freely. And I also think that people on the side of justice are finding more space to say what they believe more freely. That I know that the internet has opened up a Pandora's box of both the hatred as well as the love and the connection and the compassionate accountability that's needed for us to move forward. So I think it's a yes and. Yes, there are people who are doing too much online and also in public. Like we're watching folks come out to demonstrations and protest and coming with their hatred, spewing things that they've heard, conspiracy theories, and made up news that they have been listening to. And it's unfortunate. And yet, like I said, there's many more of us who are finding spaces online and in person where it is safe to gather to express our values and beliefs, so that I don't feel like our movement is getting smaller. I feel like our movement is actually getting bigger. And the more that we do that work of becoming aware of how we have the ability to become oppressors, even as we have been oppressed, or even as we are actively being oppressed. If the more we become aware of that and able to dismantle that, our movements will open up, because we'll be able to have these complex and these hard conversations that won't do that thing where we just get rid of people and we just say, well, you don't belong here because you don't believe everything I believe, which is not what solidarity is. And I think that that's kind of what clamps down on our movements. But the more that we are able to see each other in our fullness, as intersectionality calls us to do, we become aware of how we are using our power, our movements will continue to open up, and there will be less and less space for that hatred.
We have Ken in the Q&A said, thank you. Regarding dismantling oppression, I sit with patients who are mostly children of color and their parents. I ask them to tell me their truth. I let them know that we have all the time they need, and then I sit and listen.
Thank God. We need more people who have the patience and have the awareness to know that they don't know everything. That's where I try to be. I don't know everything. And I can always learn something new, particularly from people who don't share my identities. And this again is what intersectionality calls us to do, to find out the ways in which we have been marginalized, but in fact to learn about how other people have been marginalized and how we have either implicitly or explicitly been involved in their marginalization. And so that listening part, that giving yourself time to hear folks' truth, even when it's hard, that's so important. And I'm grateful that you're doing that work. I hope that other people are joining you in that work. We need more of that. May we all find the time and the energy and the awareness to do that.
We have Sharon in the who's raised her hand. Let's see if I can allow her to talk. Sharon, if you're there, I'm going to put you on to ask your question.
Hi, Sharon. So far, you're on mute.
Yes, I was very interested in how I feel that you've had so many roads that you have traveled. Are you still practicing any of your audiology now, or are you mainly devoting yourself to being a rabbi?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will never not be an audiologist. So we'll start there. I will always be an audiologist. Because I no longer have a license to practice, I can't practice audiology. Um, but I offer up whatever um, service I can to people on a voluntary nature. And one of the things that was so funny to me was that as I was, practicing audiology, a lot of people asked me all these questions about my Jewishness. And the more I am in this role as a rabbi, people ask me all this stuff about ears. And so I don't think I'll ever get away from it, which is okay with me. And, over the pandemic, because of people not having access to get services for their hearing aids, kind of like things I can take care of. So I've actually had the opportunity to help some folks with the thing I really loved when I was practicing audiology was taking wax out. And so I've had the ability to extract wax from people's ears, to like pull out their domes from their hearing aids, and I've really enjoyed that. It's been kind of a different use of my brain over the last couple of years, and I've appreciated having the opportunity to do it when it pops up.
I also noticed that you referred to disability. My background is working with the visually impaired, and it's interesting if you had some exposure. You seem very sensitive to that area. That also figures into intersectionality. And I wondered how you connected with that in your work.
Yes, I think part of why it resonates so deeply with me is because of the many years that I was an audiologist and I interacted with people who would either self identify as disabled, or people would say they were differently abled, and so I always, like, I try. I don't always, and never are probably words I shouldn't use, but I try my best to um, make sure that those who are most vulnerable around me are their voices are uplifted and their needs are being met. And so I'm, you know, again, like, some of this is growing edge for me, but to like realize what my power is in a situation, because oftentimes we'll say, well, I don't have any power, but actually we have a lot more power than we think we do, or that we give ourselves credit for. And so when I notice that I have more power in a situation than other people, I do my best to you know either literally or metaphysically kind of push their needs and to the forefront, so that their needs are met, as well as the rest of the folks' needs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
All right. If we
We
have
got
any
other
other,
folks who wanna like come on mic. That was nice.
just raise your hand if you'd like to come on mic and ask a question. Raise your hand in the chat, and I can have you talk.
I'm also appreciating the birds chirping right now. We've got a few more minutes. Um, I think there's one other thing I'll say before we kind of wrap up here. Maybe I'll sing another song. Earlier I talked about how I'm concerned about us, and I hope that I was clear about why I'm concerned about us, that we're kind of falling for this okie doke, and it happens over and over and over again. And particularly as someone who lives at the intersection of Black and trans and Jewish, I feel like I'm kind of sensitive to what is happening, and I just don't want us to fail again. And I think a lot of folks got kind of comfortable before 2016, and we thought that our best way forward was actually kind of compressing in terms of our movements of needing to say the right things and needing to do the right things instead of trying to do that self-reflective internal work of dismantling oppression within. Because when you do that, that is a full-time job. It's a full-time job for me. So I have less time out doing the work of policing other people, which is one of the things we, I think, as a movement, don't want to engage in. I don't think we want to be involved in telling people how to like the quote unquote right things to say. What I hope we're doing more of, which will help us expand this movement from now until the future, is to do that internal reflection, but also to align our own actions and words with the values that we say we hold. Instead of telling other people what values to hold, let's just start aligning our values with our actions. Did somebody come up in the Q&A?
We do. We've got a question. Anonymous attendee asks, what would be a good, joyful way to observe Pride and Juneteenth this year?
Well, here's two things. One is there are so many awesome ways, I think, this year to celebrate Juneteenth, mainly because this also is a like a cardinal year of the commemoration of the massacre at Tulsa, of Black Wall Street. And so there's so many ways in which you can engage with learning, and I feel like learning can be joyful. And also, there is something called a Juneteenth Seder, which was created by Black Jews in this group called the Black Jewish Liberation Collective, of which I'm a part. And so there is an offering of a Haggadah, or a ritual for celebrating Juneteenth in the style of Passover, because just like Passover, Juneteenth is about liberation. So that's one way. And you can just look up Black Jewish Liberation Collective and find the information about that Seder. But I think that there's also just so much music and culture that has been cultivated for us online. And I think that there's many ways in which people are gathering, hopefully safely, that you can attend those. And being here, hopefully this was joyful. So appreciate you coming here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I guess we've hit the hour mark, so we can wrap things up. Let me share my screen. I'm going to show some slide with some upcoming Pride Month events that we have at MHS.
So good, you're going to answer this question of what more can you do joyfully to celebrate Pride?
Gone full circle. So there we go. It's up on your screen right now. And I just want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank Koach. And I have to say the earwax part gave me a flashback because I do recall the removals, the extractions. One times in my adult life, I genuinely feared, I thought, what have I done? So yeah, and everyone take a look at the screenshot or the screen with the events. You can find more information on all these activities and events on our calendar at mohistory.org or the Missouri History Museum face page. Don't forget to fill out the survey that should have popped up in your browser to let us know what you thought of the program tonight. And thank you all again. We hope to see you soon. Have a great and safe Pride Month. And thank you, Koach.
It's my pleasure. So happy to be back in St. Louis with y'all. Hopefully soon it will be in person.
Hopefully, don't forget us over here. So
I will never forget.
all right, I will close the program and thank you again, everyone. Have a great evening.